Hi there, Robin here from Expert On. Today we are going to be talking about this, which is the ProFX30 from Mackie. We're going to talk about all the inputs, all the features. We're going to talk about some of the things that I've plugged in here today to give you an idea of why these plugs are here and what are some of the things you can do with them. Same thing with all the buttons that we have on the board. So to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to first talk about how, when we unpack it, we get the machine. Now the machine normally is set up so that the main dials are set either at 12 o'clock or off, and all the levers are in the up position. So before we actually get into turning it on and getting it all wound up, even though ours is on, you want to turn everything back down. The last thing we want to do is have anything up, because up basically means we're going to add noise. So if nothing's plugged into it and we have this turned up, it's just going to add noise to whatever's going to happen. So we're going to go all the way across the board, turn everything down. Now again, I turn everything down at the end, but we're going to leave a couple of them up because I did take time to set it up a little bit, and we'll talk about that next. So if we want to break it down into simple settings, it's a 30 channel mixer, which basically means so many standard channels with all the controls going across, with inserts coming across the top, mics at the very top, and then we've got our basic line input jacks down below. From there, we end up at this little section here, which has compressors built into it. So that's real nice because if we're going to have lead singers, anybody like that, and we want to control their audio and have it fit in with everything else, that's going to happen here, and that's going to do a really good job for us. When we do this, we lose our inserts because that's exactly what's going on with these guys. Then we've got our paired inputs, which are here. So we've got the 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30 all set up across the top. So that's how we get 30 channels, and that's how they break it down. The first 18 all have insert channels. So if you're running a processor or DBX box, we'll talk about that in a second. Anything that we want to modify the audio with is going to go in the first 18. Then on the next set, again, we've got compressors in place of the inserts, and then we've got all the paired. So things like keyboards, electric drums, any type of external audio that just requires a plug-in, and we got two channels, we can utilize that here. Moving on, we've also got 3 monitor channels, outputs on top, and those are also going to be packaged down here below. We're going to run through a little sample of that as well. Then we've got our main outputs, and our main outputs are XLR and 1/4 inch, bounce and unbounce. So this way you have a choice of how you want to hook it up. In the far corner, we even have an analog tape in, tape out. Headphone jack located just below that. And then we've got our subs, 1, 2, 3, 4, as sub outputs on top of everything else. And we're going to talk about that, which is located right down here, and how that works with all these buttons located at the bottom. So we're going to cover that as well. Then as we move down, we've got an EQ, we've got meters, we've got all our separated. This is all our output side here. This is all our input side here. So if you're looking at where do I break this mixer, right here, inputs, right here, outputs. And the same thing pretty much lines up on top. This side, all these jacks are going to be outputs, all these jacks are going to be inputs. Down at the bottom, we've got all our levers. We've got our subs out here, and we're going to cover that. There's 4 of them. There's buttons lined up right across the top. Our main output, and then we're going to cover all these buttons. So we've got mute buttons. How does that work? What does that bring us? And how do all these buttons work up here? So at this point, we're going to take it 1 channel, and that's going to cover us across the board to a certain point, and then we're going to start over again and talk about what the other ones do. We're also going to talk about how the insert works. So that's going to be on the next part, starting right now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first line, and that's going to cover us pretty much across the whole board for the 30 channels. And what we're going to talk about are the actual knobs. Now, real important, there is an instruction manual that comes included. Now, think of this as an instruction manual for a car. They do talk about what all the buttons are and where they are, but they don't exactly tell you what to do with it, because it's basically like saying, here's the knob, this is the steering wheel, here's the horn. They're not going to teach you how to drive. So same thing with a manual. Manuals will talk about what's here, so this way you understand if one brand is different than another when it comes to referencing specific features on it. It's where you know what's going on. That's what the manual is really for. It's not instructions on how to use a controller. So don't feel too frustrated that you may have to watch a couple of videos and do some reading on it. But the nice part is, it is at the same time like driving a car. If you can operate a smaller 16-channel mixer or 12-channel mixer like this, it's basically just more of the same with a few more options to it. So that's the main thing going on here. Now, of course, when we get to larger mixers, we want to be able to control things separately. So we are going to talk about why this is going on way down at the end. But first, we're going to focus on this line here. Now, I'm going to go through all the features here, and then I'll tell you how many channels that covers across the board. If we start at the bottom, we've got ourselves our main lever. Then we've got ourselves a pan and tilt, so left and right. Then we've got effects. So these are the built-in effects, which are located down at the end. This is, again, gain level controls. Do I want to have this channel play through one of the monitors? Again, we'll talk about the monitors when we get here, but we do have a choice to send the signal out to one of those monitors. So we got 1, 2, and 3 monitor options. And what we've got here is the EQ. Now, the EQ is broken up into 3 parts with a white button right down the middle. Now, what this white button does is allows me to make a variable gain on the mid-range. So why do I want to do a variable gain on the mid-range? It's pretty simple. First, we'll cover the frequencies on the low, cuts up and high gain controls at the 80 hertz, and then at a 12 kilohertz is for the highs. Now, in the middle, you're going to go all the way down to 100 and all the way up to 8,000. This allows, especially if you're looking for somewhere where maybe feedback is lying, you can adjust that there. But it also helps you if you're looking for somebody's voice and being able to add or minus a little bit of that. That gives you a lot of definition because that repeats itself, of course, just like all the other features across the majority of the board. Now, then we get to the top, we've got a button, which is a low cut for the 100 hertz. So trying to get rid of any background noise, low noise, hissing, that sort of thing. That's going to help cut it out. This is good if you're running in a place that may have central AC. That gets rid of that. Any things like transformers, stuff like that, just background, low. We can't hear it, but of course the mic picks it up, no problem. That's going to cut that out for us. Microphone gain. Now they're specific about it. They do tell you it's a microphone gain because it doesn't actually affect the line input, just the microphone. Now here, I've got the volume turned down. I'm going to unplug this. This is my insert. And I'm going to demonstrate this in a moment. Then we have our line input. Then we've got our mic. Now remember, if it's a microphone, it always gets plugged in on the top. Always 3-pin XLR on the top. If it's anything else but a microphone, then it's going to get plugged into the line input. So when in doubt, is it a microphone? If it's a microphone, up on top. If it's not, it goes down into one of the line inputs. So that pretty much covers all the input features all the way across the first 18. Now, when you get on to 19 to 22, you're going to have compressor. Now, compressor can help. This is part of their feedback suppression system. Plus, it also, if you want to have the impression somebody's yelling, because they are, when they're singing, their voice goes way up high above everybody else's. You don't want that translating directly out of the speaker. You just want to have that impression, that feeling of somebody just ripping it really loud, yelling. This will allow this input section here to match with this depending on how much compression. So it doesn't cut it off. It takes it and it just basically, it's like having a balloon. We want to keep the detail, but we just want it a little tighter, a little smaller, proportionally brings everything in. And that's what's going on with the compression. That's how it also helps with feedback, because if feedback starts to accelerate, so we start getting that loop and we start getting feedback on one of those channels, what will happen is it won't let it get out of control. It's going to say everything else is at a certain level. We're going to make sure that this stays in that level. And that kind of captures it a little bit for you and helps you control what's going on. That covers from 19 to 22. So everything else is the same, just like channel 1. Those ones here, all the same. All we did was add that compressor on here instead of having a line insert. Then we're going to get into the last group. Again, all the same, but what we've done is we've doubled up on our line inputs. So this way, if we have a left and right, or running a 2-channel per system, we can do that. We can also run 1, but we can plug in 2, and that's going to give us all those options as well. They still put the microphones on top for channel 23, 24, and 25, 26. So you still get to use mics there if you need them. But on the last 27, 28, 29, and 30, they're just going to be the 1/4-inch line input jacks. But that's all right, because there's a lot of channels here. We've got 30 of them. Mic inputs alone, if we were to go, we get to 24 mic input jacks. Really, really handy. Okay, so let's get back to the very first channel and talk about what we've got going on here. Insert channels. Now, that's not just a knob, that's a function. What it allows us to do is allows us to take the sound from the microphone, send it out to something, and bring it back to the board. So we can add an effect, maybe a compressor, anything that you're going to want to play around with the voice on that particular channel. Could be anything. Could be something to EQ it. It could be something to add better compression. Could be an effects. Could be whatever you can. Your imagination is all that's going to stop you there. Now, for me to make this happen, I did hook it up to another mixer off to the side, just so I can use the effects on that mixer in here. Normally, just so you know how it runs, you're going to have a balanced connection or a stereo connection if you're more familiar with what that looks like. So this way you're going to have a common, you're going to have a left and a right. In this case, it's going to be an input and an output. And again, we look over here and we're going to have an input and an output. If you accidentally plug this in wrong, it just won't work. Flip it around and it'll work for you. So that's the type of cable connection we want to have. Now, I just happen to use one that had a 3.5 and I adapted it to a 1/4-inch. It works just fine doing this. At the end of the day, it's wired in properly. That's what counts. So we've got this. I've got it off to a mixer on the side. If we do a little sound demonstration, I've got a microphone plugged in right here. We're going to turn this on without anything plugged in. We should be able to turn this up. Now we're going to find out that I've got 2 speakers hooked up. I do have a main speaker hooked up in the back of me, and I've got a monitor hooked up on the table. Now at this point, I have no effects on the board running whatsoever because we look at the yellow knob and it's off. That's what's going on there. My gain is for the microphone set to 50%. Now, I'm going to turn this down, and we're going to take this cable that I just took off here, and we're going to plug this in. Now, I'm using an exaggerated form of the actual effects on that little mixer off to the side. So now it's plugged into the one input. The effects are turned on. The main out's coming back in here. So it's looping to that and coming right back. So now when I turn that up, there we go. So now we have the effects from that little mixer. It could have been anything, could have been a processor, could have been whatever we wanted it to be, but that's how an insert channel works. Without it, the signal basically comes up here, down to here, comes across and out to here. And that's how we end up with what we've got going on here. So. And the reason why you're going to use inserts is because not everything needs to be done the same, and you're going to want to localize, and you're going to want to make certain microphones or batch of microphones unique. And that's how you do that. You do that with this input here. So now, saying that, there are effects built into the mixer. So on the next channel, this channel here, I do have the effects turned up 50%. And if we come all the way down to the end, we're going to see the internal effects. And I've got it set at, I think, 10 in this case. And we've got the effects button right below it. So the light is turned off, and that means that the effects are on. That button says mute on it, effects mute. So if it lights up, there's no effects. If the light's off, we do get effects. Now I also have it set for monitor options. I can have the main output, which is the white knob here, and then the 3 green knobs are for the monitor 1, 2, and 3. So do I want the effects on the stage or not? That's what's going on. Somebody may be wearing earbuds. Again, that's why I have the monitor, and I have the ability to turn these features on and off. So again, I turn that on. Now we're on channel 2, and I can turn that and control each channel individually by using how much do I want to have. And that's what these knobs are going to do. I only want to have this volume set at about, let's say, 40%, or the gain here at 40%. I can have another one set at 60% if I need that to be louder. So that's what's going on here. Now remember, I do have it playing out at the main. If I want to turn it off, I've turned it off on the outside, but I still have it here, and that brings it up on both. So, demonstrate, if I turn the main volume down, keep this on, all I have is this speaker here. That's one of my monitors. I can turn the effects off so it's no longer playing through the monitor, but I can turn this up and now it's still playing through the main. And that's how we use a monitor in conjunction with the effects. Now, if we look at the actual monitors here for just a moment, so this way we can cover everything else, the monitors have their own controls and they're all located in green. So anytime we talk about monitors, they'll always be the green buttons. Now, let's move on to the buses, because this is a big feature on this machine. Why do we have buses and how do they work? Buses are so this way, if I have the drummer coming up, if you watch people do band setups or stage setups, it could take a while to set people up. So a drummer may take a while. It may not have everybody there. The lead singer may not want to hang around for that. People may off to lunch. And the same thing for everybody else. If you've got a choir, if you've got a lead singer, these people may come and go at different times. It allows you to set them up, and then all you have to do when you bring them all together is use the buses. And this is how you do that. These buttons, if I have a lead singer plugged into the first channel, we'll say that, I can decide to have them go straight out. They're going to go right to the main. So I don't need to play with them until they show up. So that's going to be there. Let's say I have a group of people, I have a drummer in this case, or a choir in the next batch of inputs. Let's say from 4 to 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those inputs there are all going to be a choir. I may choose to put the choir on channel 3 and 4, and I just have to quickly browse here so I can see what's going on. I think that's my 3 and 4, 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 3 and 4. I'm just doing that because, of course, they all line up. Now, what that means is whatever I plug in here is going to be on bus 3 and 4. So now we look way at the very end here, and we're going to see 4 knobs, and then a 5th one at the very end. The 5th one is my main out to the speakers. That's in a green box. Now, the other 4 are the buses. All right, so we're at the buses. So again, because we chose 3 and 4, I'm going to be able to control 3 and 4 all separately from here. So I can turn them up and down accordingly. So I've set them up at universal right in the center. And I may decide once I bring everybody else in that I'll be a little higher or a little lower. That's all I have to do. I don't have to go in and fine tune and adjust every single channel, because that's where the inputs are all lying. So everything's all played around, and I've come up with some great combination that worked perfectly, and I've set them all up. I've set the EQ. I've set the monitors. All that's all done. All I need to do when I bring other people in is either come all the way to the end, either going to turn it up a little bit, or I'm going to turn it down a little bit. That's all, because everybody else is going to be set up on the other 2 channels, or they're going to be set up as a main line out. That's why there's 3 buttons. So I've got channel 1 and 2, or bus 1 and 2, bus 3 and 4, and the last one is LR, or main. So I wish they would have used, because that would have explained it better. So by pressing the 3rd one, I'm ignoring the fact that I have these sub channels right here, and I'm going to go straight to the output. So I'm also going to add my apologies. If I use the word bus instead of sub, some brands use bus, some brands use sub. They're the same word based on what they do. Now there's one more set of buttons on top of each one of these. You're going, hey, what are these buttons up here for? This is how you actually make, in Mackie's case, sub channels work in 4. I can designate them as a left or as a right, or I can designate them as both. So this way, that means they'll both come out of the channels equally. So it all depends. Am I using this in a studio recording setup? Then I'll be a little bit more specific and break down my channels maybe. If I'm using it as a live setting, I'll probably be sending it out to both. Now, that's ultimately up to you. Play around with that, figure out if you do need to break it down specifically to each channel, then you are going to want to choose a certain number of lines hooked up onto the left side only, and you're going to use your pan and tilt to make that choice, and then press the recording buttons, because this way, if I want to make a very detailed, unique setup, I can press on any given channel, let's say 1 and 2, but by just choosing a left and a right, I can define this one that I've chosen, which was here, and then I can come over here and pan that one. By pressing that, it's only going to send the signal out to sub 2, and this one's only going to send a signal out to sub 1, because I've gone here and I've chosen my left and right options with these buttons. So I hope you were able to follow on that one, but that's how these sub channels work. So to make sure everything's working, you've got to make sure that these buttons are pushed up here and that you've matched a button down here to go with it. So in this case over here, I chose these buttons, these lines to be 3 and 4, so I pressed down 3 and 4. I also chose them to be a left and right, so I've come over here where my 3 and 4 is, and I've chosen my left and right options by pressing those buttons there. So now this signal is completely connected all the way. Slide this up, I finished my gain controls on it, it's now connected to my master volume. That's how we got all that to work. Now, there are all kinds of fun things you can do with it. You can mute out particular channels, because if you're running them but you don't need them at that particular time, I can hit the mute, and those lines will no longer be part of what's going on there. So if I need, if I have somebody wearing a headset, and I have somebody in the backstage, I have equipment set up all around, some of those mics aren't going to be hot all the time, and I can just mute them and bring them up as I want. Now besides all of this going on in the mixer, I do have other things plugged in. So in this case, I've got auxiliary. I wanted to show some adapters that are commonly used and that you may want to have. If you have a cable that in this case I'm using so I can play music and demonstrate how that works, it's 3.5 here, but this particular cable happens to be a set of RCAs. So it's good to have around adapters like this. These are RCA 1/4 inch. As long as they're good quality, they're going to do a good job, and I'm plugging them right in here. And this allows me now to take my 1/4 inch jacks, turn them into RCAs, and be able to plug, in this case, my phone right into there. Other cable that we have is up here. We've got a 1/4 inch. It's unbalanced because that's coming off of our monitor 1 out of 1, 2, 3, plugged into our speaker. We've got XLR cables. Now over here, this is a neat cable. This cable is plugged in to a tiny little microphone monitor input jack. Now this little box allows me to plug a microphone in all by itself, so it's not part, it's like one channel mixer. Now, why do I have this box plugged into here? It serves a very unique purpose. Let's say I'm at the back of the house and I need to talk to people on the stage or behind stage or wearing monitors. I need to communicate to them and let them know what's going on. I don't want the audience to know that. All right, so by connecting this little box, which is basically, like I said, a one channel mixer, and having a microphone plugged into it right here, and that being plugged in right onto this part of the board, and what do I plug into? It's an auxiliary return. This allows me to come a little further down on the board and actually notice that I have an auxiliary return located right here in the middle. It says auxiliary return on top, and I have 1, 2, 3 monitors, and I have a main out control. Now remember, my monitors are all adjusted as a volume level here, and then I decide how much of the effects I want or how much of the mic returns. Now, by turning this on, I now can talk specifically to here. Now, I'm going to turn this up in the back. It's not there. That's because it's not playing on the main output in the back of the room. So this mic is specifically just for the monitors, and it's located right there. So again, I need to speak to somebody through their ear monitors or through the stage monitors. I can do that right here just by having a mic plugged into the return through a single channel monitor mixer, that sort of thing, coming right off of here. Now I can add myself right in. Now that could have been anything else. That could have maybe have been a backtrack that a singer needs to listen to sing. That could be anything we want it to be, but that's something specific that's not going to be played out through the mains, but in the back. So if I turn on just a regular microphone again, we'll notice that's playing in the back. If I wanted to, I can add that into the actual main, into the monitor, sorry. And if I needed to, now we know that's on. I come here, nothing at all coming off the back. I come here, that's coming off the back. This is the microphone that I'm using just to run the board and talk to the people through the monitors on the stage or in their ears. And This is going to be what everybody in the audience hears. This is the microphone, and this is what the singers are using. This is what the instruments are plugged into. This is what the choir is plugged into. This is what's going on the main board. So again, the idea is I need to talk to somebody directly, and I don't want anybody else to hear it. This is a great way to do it from the from the back to the front of the actual room. So there you go. One of those little tricks I like to use, so I thought I'd show it to you and see if it's something you need. It's there. That's how it works. But again, this could have been anything else. Could have been backtracks, like I said. Could have been any of those type of features. So that's why I have that box hooked up here today. Now, I'm not brand specific. If it works and it's clean and it's not adding any noise or background hiss to the system, you're fine. Price point is not the most important thing here. Working properly is. So there we go. Next on is the EQ. We've got an EQ, so we can adjust the sound that we're getting through here and the sound that we're getting through our headphones when we're listening to it and saying, I need to do some adjustments out in the actual church or hall or rehearsal studio, wherever you're actually using it. That way, you've got an EQ, you can fine tune that through here. You can turn the EQ on and off just by pressing a button and being able to sample it back and forth and making a decision on what's right. You've got the option to have that EQ run through the monitors or not. So again, that's why there's two buttons, basically EQ on and off or bypassed. And also, do I want to have it in the mains or do I want to have it in the monitors as well? So that's what's going on here. Your choice on what you want EQ. Then we've got a small group of output plugs here. Again, if we want to be specific and I want to add my lines to be controlled instead of out through the mains, I want to be able to just control them directly and listen to the channels individually. I want to listen to my sub channels 1, 2, 3, and 4. They also give me a direct line out for 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the subs. So this way we have more controls, more options of how we want to listen to it and how we want people to listen to it just by plugging that in here. Sometimes it has to do that somebody's in a sound room and everybody else is in a general recording studio space. You need to be able to play that back to them in that space, and that'll allow you to do it through that output. So that's just up to you. That's, again, choices in the way you hook it up. There's lots of fun there because the recipe is pretty much endless with this thing. So I think we've covered all the big features on it. Now, of course, it does have a USB output, so we can plug it into a computer. It does come with software and a license for that software. But the important thing to know is that it's a 2-channel out system. So it's coming off to our computer. It's only pulling 2 channels via USB back to our computer. We do have an option on that, which is here. I can choose with this button to have the USB either be just designated to these 2 channels, or I can have those 2 coming out of these 2, the main outs at the end, which basically means it's going to capture the entire board based on what I do with the left and right channels and come out through here. If I have that button set up in the down position, it's only going to come out of channel 1 and 2. So I'm just trying to capture some recording effects, some sound, a singer, that sort of thing. I can do that just with these 2 channels here, and it's not going to interrupt or pick up anything else on the board. So that's what's going on here. Another way to think of that as an option, if you're using it, let's say, for a church, and you want to do live YouTube or Facebook Live, that sort of thing, you want to capture it and broadcast it out, you're going to want to be able to change from just somebody talking or a preacher or somebody reading, which could be on these 2 channels, to the entire choir and everybody else. Now, if you want to maximize the sound quality of that and you don't want to have any background noise, you can easily switch from here to here at a simple push of a button, which is really good in a live setting where I don't want to pick up any noise from people maybe talking in the background when it's the choir and they're not singing, they're just sitting there being part of the service versus somebody actually doing the service. So again, pushing that button cuts everybody else out, gives you these 2 channels, or vice versa. I press that button and now I have the whole board live going to the USB output. So that's why they give you some options. Again, creativity, you'll get the idea. Also, we have a source input here. I can switch between my 2 channels from my USB as my source input, which is here in this white knob, or I can use the traditional tape input, which can be virtually anything but a record player. So no turntables up here. And that's what's going on there. I'm going to say we pretty much covered everything feature-wise on this machine. There's lots more that we can talk about, and we can talk about how all the settings go, but remember, it's proportionate. Once you get a handle on 1 or 2 channels, pretty much just is more of the same going across. Don't be intimidated by all these knobs. If you can do this, you can do this. It's okay. That's no problem there. Again, we've got solo, which basically allows me to listen in to and be able to play off of one channel. It allows me to just capture that one channel through the system. And we've got mute buttons, which allows me to then mute that. So if I just want to hear it through my headphones by pressing these 2 buttons, I can do that. And now I'll just hear it through my headphones. And when I need it to go live, I can just take the mute off and I'm all set. Again, that's what's going on here. That's why there's extra buttons. And that's it. I think we pretty much covered it. At any point, you can always subscribe. We always cover more machines. When we get into the bigger ones like this, I try and make it more of a lesson on the how-to, because to be honest, it's a lot of machine. And if you're at this level looking at a machine like this, you kind of also probably want to know what all the other input jacks are going to do for you, and that's why we talk about it that way. So subscribing lets you know when we've got new videos, and we pretty much cover everything. Also, I want to say thank you very much for taking the time. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them down below. I don't always get a chance because, well, I'm running a showroom here, but if I can, I'll reply back. A lot of times other people catch the comments and the questions and they add in, and that's okay. That's how everybody gets to help everybody. So we'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.